Coinbase is taking a lot of heat right now, and how this story plays out will set the stage for how cryptocurrencies and DeFi can be used by you and I for our finances. And DeFi, if it can prevail, will be one of the greatest things to happen to the average consumer because it means we'll have control over our money again, money that is currently going to the banks. But it seems like this might be at risk. So let's discuss what has happened with Coinbase and how it impacts us. And if you're one of the viewers who really appreciates when I go deep in a topic, you are going to love this video. Also, if you've been waiting to get into the Patreon, now is the time to do it. I finally got some more help so I can expand this thing a little bit. I'm opening up a few more spots. So if you've been waiting to grab a spot for buy alerts, more content, and live coaching, you want to grab one of those, link down below before it fills up again. Now here is the story. Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, he sent out this flurry of tweets disclosing that Coinbase is being investigated by the SEC for their soon-to-be launched Lend platform. And by flurry, I mean flurry. There was something like 20 tweets on this. Kind of a crazy strategy, but we'll see. We'll see how this one pans out. So the idea for the Lend program is basically a higher interest savings account. It's not exactly a savings account, but it's the same kind of idea where users can hold their savings in USDC, a US stable coin. Now a stable coin is just backed 1-to-1 to the US dollar and it tracks the US dollar. It should always be $1 exactly. Users would be paid 4% annually in return for storing their cash with Coinbase. Now 4%, it's not much. But that measly 4% is actually 100 times higher than the average yield that banks pay for savings accounts. So it's a dramatic difference for just about anyone who has cash sitting in a savings account. So this product would be a no-brainer for anyone looking to earn more cash that they're not going to invest or that they want to stow away. However, of course, with cryptos, even with stable coins, they're not FDIC insured, so there is a bit more risk to get that 4%, but not a whole lot more risk. So the story continues from here, and Coinbase was set to release their Lend product. And then the SEC came in, and the SEC said, "Nuh-uh, hold your horses there, bucko. You can't do that. This little Lend program of yours, this is an investment security, and you're not authorized." And don't worry, we'll explain exactly what an investment security is in a minute. But Coinbase gets this message, and they're like, wait a minute, what? How is this a security? Show us where it says that we can't do this Lend product. And that's the problem. This isn't explicitly written anywhere that Coinbase can't do that. The SEC literally can't point to where it's outlawed because it doesn't exist. And the reason for that is the bulk of the Securities Act was written in 1933, about 80 years before anyone was even talking about crypto. So the laws, they haven't exactly kept up with the time. So there's no law that they can point to. And then to add insult to injury, Coinbase is far from the first US company to offer exactly this. Gemini does it through their Earn program. BlockFi does it. KuCoin, the exchange that I use, does it with far better rates, actually as high as 30%. I'll pin a video above that breaks down how exactly that works. But either way, lending is very common. Crypto lending is very common. Coinbase is just the largest company to do so, and by default, they're going to be the ones who have to fight this fight against regulators because all eyes are on them. And this is exactly what the SEC wants. There isn't well-defined case law, so by going to court, lawyers on both sides of this argument will argue the case and a decision will be made for the SEC without them having to do a whole lot of work. And there's actually even a term for this method of creating laws through litigation. It's called regulation through litigation. And there's a lot of argument as to whether it's even constitutional to do this, but it's fairly common. And of course, Coinbase doesn't want their Lend product to be registered as a security because this would mean even more regulatory scrutiny. Now, reading through this story, a million questions came into my mind. What is an investment security in this instance? How do banks get around something like this? Does the SEC really have any power and say in this matter? And a whole lot more. So because of this confusion and the gray area here, I wanted to do my part and really research this topic to see if I could find anything that may give us a better idea as to what we can expect in the future. And I think I found it. So let's do some defining. What is a security? You'd think this would be simple. Unfortunately, even this isn't an easy question. A security can be any of these things. So a better question to ask is, what is an investment contract security? This we can define and figure out. Not easily, but we can do it. An investment contract is defined by a 4-part test called a Howey test. An investment contract needs to hit all 4 of these criteria in order to be considered a security. So in order to explain this, let's hop over to the iPad where I made a little presentation on the Howey test and how we can attribute it to Coinbase. So it needs to hit all 4 of these criteria. First, it needs to be an investment of money. Second, it needs to have an expectation of profits. Those are pretty self-explanatory. This is where it gets a little bit more confusing. Third is a common enterprise. This means investors and the company rise and fall together, meaning the company profits, you profit. The company loses money, you lose money. And then fourth, from the efforts of a promoter or third party. Now, this basically means, is the return a result of some kind of significant effort from the company or managerial effort on some part to create an investment return? That's where it gets a little bit more confusing. So here it is visualized in 4 parts. Significant managerial efforts, investment of money, a common enterprise, and expectation of profits. And I have to give a little thanks here to Nick Grossman's blog, who helped me understand this far better. So here's the exclusions. This is where it will really start to make sense. So remember, if any of these 4 criteria aren't hit, then it is not a security. So first, an investment of money. What isn't an investment of money? Gifts. Credit card rewards, free crypto airdrops, anything that you're not actually paying for is considered a gift and wouldn't be an investment security. Next, expectation of profits. Now, what wouldn't you expect profits in? Well, that would be products. Anything you buy or consume and use that you're just not expecting to receive a monetary return. Third, a common enterprise. Now, this could be collectibles, NFTs, baseball cards, pet rocks, anything you collect. You are not rising and falling with the company. With an NFT, the NFT you own might go up in value, but the company who minted it might go down in value. They are not aligned completely. And then fourth, significant managerial efforts. So an exclusion here would be commodities. Beans, wheat, Bitcoin, Ethereum. There isn't some manager trying to work to increase the price of Bitcoin or beans for that matter. So now we can zoom out and ask, does Coinbase's Lend product hit these criteria? Okay, investment of money. Yes, you are investing money into an account for a 4% return. Expectation of profits. Yes, you are expecting a 4% return. A common enterprise. Yes, you make money when Coinbase makes money. Coinbase will take that money that you're giving to them. They will lend it out to someone else for a higher interest rate, let's say 8%. They get paid their 8%, you get paid your 4%. You rise and fall with Coinbase. Significant managerial efforts. This is a little bit of gray area there, but I would probably say, yes, there is significant managerial efforts here because Coinbase is having to find people to lend this to, and you would need them to lend that money again in order for you to make a return. But where you can start scratching your head a little bit, so we can see, does Coinbase's lending hit these criteria? I would say probably yes. Of course, there's gray area here. But does my savings account also hit these criteria? So if we look back at these criteria, your regular bank savings account is an investment of money. Yes, you're putting money into the account. Is there expectation of profits? Yes, you do expect the bank to pay you some kind of rate of return, even though it's so small that you probably don't even think about it. Is it a common enterprise? Yes, you make money when the bank makes money. The bank lends it out, makes money, gives you money. Significant managerial efforts. Again, yes, the bank is lending out money. They're doing their due diligence on the back end. They're lending to credible borrowers. You are expecting them to do a good job, which then both protects your money and pays you your minuscule return. So how does this work? How is a bank able to do exactly this, but a bank lending out money isn't a security? You'd think based on the Howey test, this is obviously a security, except there's one little piece of that 90-year-old document we referenced earlier, the 1933 Securities Act, specifically Section 3A2. This section exempts any security issued or guaranteed by a bank from registration under the Securities Act. Now, why would they allow this? And this is what they have to say, because banks are highly regulated. And as a result, the SEC feels that banks will provide adequate disclosures about their business and operations, even in the absence of federal securities requirements. And you know banks, they're just always following the rules given to them. Banks never do anything wrong, ever.
The heat is coming down on the bankers.
Goldman Sachs agreeing to pay an additional $2.6 billion in fines.
The German lender has been fined almost $630 million over a Russian money laundering scheme.
Global banking giant HSBC agrees to a record payment, $1.92 billion. Yes, that is billion with a B, to settle accusations of money laundering.
Today, Deutsche Bank was fined $150 million for their associations with Jeffrey Epstein.
Now, where does this leave Coinbase? In my armchair lawyer opinion, it seems that they still have a shot at their lend program, but it's far from certain. The reason that they have a shot is because of another little piece of text I found in the Securities Act. It turns out that there are even more exclusions. So here it says the term security includes any note. And note in this instance means a legal loan agreement between a lender and a borrower. So a note is always a security unless there's a loan term of not more than 9 months, or double unless the context otherwise requires. Now that's just an awkwardly worded line that basically means there are even more exceptions. Now what are those exceptions, you might ask? Well, there are several of them, including home mortgages, a secured business loan, but what we really care about is two specific exceptions: a note delivered in consumer financing and a note evidencing a character loan to a bank customer, which is basically a loan based on someone's credit. I believe this is where Coinbase's lawyers can step in and potentially point out that their lend program is perfectly legal. Coinbase's other option would be to simply register as a bank, which of course would have hurdles in itself in dealing with crypto and trying to get, the regulatory approval. The only two requirements that Coinbase would need in order to become a bank are, first, it would need to be a national bank or supervised institution, and second, it needs to be substantially confined to banking. If they can't do that, they have another option. They could just simply partner with a bank who does the lending for them. Of course, that's not ideal for them because that means they would take home less profits from lending, but it means that the program would still be able to survive. But now the question remains, why is this even happening? And I'm not conspiratorial at all, but I find it hard to believe that this wouldn't at least be in part because banks simply don't want it to happen. I mean, let's think about it. Not only are banks in this ultra sweet spot where they don't have to abide by securities laws for whatever reason, they get to borrow your money for far less than 1%, and the government supports them if they fail. And then on top of this, if Coinbase and others come in and start taking deposits away from these banks with their high interest accounts, 4%, 5%, banks have a lot to lose. Thanks to fractional reserve lending, banks historically only have to keep about 10% of their deposits in their vaults. This means if a bank has $1 billion in deposits of our money, they only need to keep $100 million on deck. The rest can be lent out for profit. But to make things even crazier, thanks to COVID, that reserve limit was removed, and now banks can lend 100% of assets deposited. Banks are lending out billions of dollars for essentially free, and DeFi lending poses a direct threat to this and all of their operations. So in summary, Coinbase has options, even though none of them will be fun for Coinbase. The SEC is probably overstepping, and there aren't well-defined laws here. And banks have a whole lot to lose. So this is going to be a very important battle for the future of finance, and one that you will absolutely want to keep an eye on. So I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.